Hello and welcome to this week's session of Mastering the Markets with me, Matt. I'm a senior analyst at Prime XBT and I'm super excited to be here with you guys today. So we've got a number of topics I'm going to go through, a little bit of stuff that was pretty much happening post our live session last week, Wednesday, and then obviously deep diving into a couple of fundamentals that are going to be happening throughout the rest of the week. So if you guys have not already seen our website, you can pretty much go to the main landing page. We have a lot of sort of tools as well as learn and research articles that I think are really valuable. So if this is the first time you are joining my live stream, welcome. Feel free to ask any questions that you may have. We obviously have a little prize fund running for the best question, which I will go through at the end of the session. So make sure you get through your questions and we can go through today's live stream. So it's going to be quite an important one. We've got a couple of events that are happening pretty much in the fundamental space as well as the geopolitical space that I think are quite important. And this is definitely going to impact the way price action is trading across all markets currently. So if we head over to the economic calendar for the rest of the week, we actually don't have much in terms of USD or Euro sort of news events that are going to be impacting the markets that much this week. We've obviously got our unemployment claims that will be coming out tomorrow. We had Great British Pound CPI inflation year-on-year data come out this morning, and this was quite an interesting data point. It actually came out higher than expected and higher than previous numbers. So that was quite an interesting one for the pound. We can deep dive a bit into that as well later in the session. Actual results came in at around 2.3%. Now that is quite an interesting one, as we have also been cutting interest rates for the pound over the past few weeks. So it is going to be interesting to see what the Bank of England does going forward. We then also obviously have some retail sales coming out on Friday for the pound, and we've obviously got a bit of Euro news coming out on Friday, specifically around the flash manufacturing data results. And that is going to be for both the French, German, as well as Great British Pound and CAD news as well. So the CAD news is going to be a bit more around the sort of retail sales as well as the core retail sales. So keep your eyes out on that, especially if you are trading USD CAD at the moment. And then obviously we've got some flash manufacturing PMI data results coming out for the dollar as well on Friday. Now I use Forex Factory for just a kind of a high level sort of overview of data points, but you can also navigate to our Prime XBT website and we have pretty much the same thing, going through all of the data resources which you can kind of filter. So depending on what countries you would like to look at, so for example the US, maybe it's Canada as well, you can simply apply these filters and features and you'll pretty much see everything that I've just gone through now. So let's dive into a bit of the technicals. Let's go through a couple of charts that I'm quite interested in looking at today, and we can go into some further details. So currently price action has been quite interesting, especially across the sort of cryptocurrency broad. I know last week we mentioned that we were quite interested to see how the inflation data results came in. We were both live on that session for the results to come in, and we didn't really see a sort of like pretty much a reactive move quite off the bat off the release of this announcement. However, we did see a bit of price action picking up closer to the back end of the week, mainly on Thursday and Friday. We also then had yesterday some tensions within the Ukraine and Russia space kind of picking up a little bit. So the geopolitical space is kind of heating up again, and that was definitely causing some short-term moves to happen in our risk assets. Specifically, we saw the likes of gold continuing to trade higher a little bit. We also saw Bitcoin also trading a little bit higher. But at the same time, this can also bring a bit of uncertainty. Now, we do know that with Trump coming into office, there is talks of some sort of agreement between the two countries to kind of come to an end in the war. We know we've seen from both the Iran and Israel war that was going on that we have seen some sort of consensus being met there too. So I wouldn't be surprised if this kind of fizzles out a bit. That is kind of what I'm expecting. I would like that to happen too. I would like these things to kind of come to a mutual understanding, especially with Trump coming in, and that's what he's kind of mentioned he would like to also bring into play. So yeah, let's deep dive a little bit into the technicals. We can go through gold. I did mention in our sort of previous week trading session that I was quite interested to see how price action would react pretty much either out of this trend line over here, but at the same time I was also quite curious to see how we would react if we started going into lower pricing and we actually eventually mitigated and rebalance those sort of discounted areas that we were looking for, right? So that was pretty much around $2,534. You can see here, if I zoom in, we just missed that, but we have pretty much seen quite a nice aggressive move thereafter. Now I'm going to be quite interested to see how gold is going to kind of trade over the next few days, especially with all of the sort of geopolitical tensions kind of rising again. I do anticipate that we might actually trade higher. I know on the daily time frame it actually appears to show us right now that we've actually switched on the daily time frame to say a more bearish structure. However, I wouldn't be surprised if we've just swept liquidity here and we found some sort of pretty much support area sitting in here, which if we have a look over here, you can pretty much see something like that, which we kind of just missed. So hence why I was quite keen to see if we could get a sort of tap into this 50% level of the Fibonacci tool, because that is quite a key thing for me, especially when we are trading with trending markets and we're looking for shorter term pullbacks. I want to see price rebalance itself and then continue to trade higher. So if we have a look at some of the other currencies, more specifically, I have been quite interested in the price action of Bitcoin. We are edging ever so closely to $100,000. Now it's going to be quite interesting, especially considering when price action does eventually move its way into those areas. Right now we don't look to really be showing too much momentum or signs of momentum slowing down. I was again also mentioning this in our previous stream, that I wanted to see price action maybe drop a little bit lower, say into the $80,000 zone before trading higher. However, I have been proven wrong yet again, and I'm not really seeing much pullback or sort of areas of interest kind of to pretty much trade back into. And that kind of suggests that we are potentially going to just trade higher into $100,000. I wouldn't be surprised if we go that far in the next sort of few weeks or so, especially coming into the end of this quarter and December. We know historically, considering the timing of events, that price action has really picked up in this last quarter for cryptocurrency, especially post halving, which we are seeing now too. So I'm going to be quite interested to see how price action is actually going to continue trading into the new year, especially considering that we have obviously got a lot of interesting fundamentals still to come out. We know that the Fed is also having one more potential interest rate cut, which will be happening closer to the end of this year. I think it's around the 18th of December. I will keep you posted on that. So that is kind of what we are going to be keeping our eyes out on. It will definitely fuel, say, the next sort of run, especially if we continue to trade higher. I have also been keeping my eyes out closely on assets such as Solana. Now, Solana has been trading really well for myself and I think quite a lot of people in the community over the last few weeks and months. We have pretty much nearly found ourselves in new all-time highs. We're kind of trading at around $240 roughly, so to say, and we have all-time highs at around $260. Now, if we continue to push higher into, say, new all-time highs and price discovery for Solana, I'm going to be quite eager to see how we react when we start getting to psychological levels such as $300, for example, $400, as well as $500. I would be quite interested to have those areas marked out as, say, potential price discovery regions, because when we do start to sort of catapult through these all-time highs, say the likes of Bitcoin, we've seen how price action actually really does trade quite aggressively thereafter. So if you have a look here, we pretty much had all-time highs sitting at around $69,000, and since we've broken there, we've already seen almost a 15-20% move to the upside. So I'm quite eager to see if we can get something similar on the likes of Solana. I've also been curious to see how Ethereum has traded. It is still very much lagging in comparison to the other coins. I actually just did our daily technical analysis and set out a post, and if you have not already seen, on our Learn and Research tab, we have a really cool feature called Market Research. So if you go and click over there, you can pretty much navigate to all of our fundamental as well as our technical analysis posts. So depending on what you're interested in, so let's say for example you'd like to filter on technical analysis and you would like to look at cryptocurrency, this will all filter automatically for you and you'll be able to see all the posts that we have written out. So this is the post that I've drawn up today on Ethereum, and we can pretty much deep dive into that a little bit further. So what I'm looking for, considering that price action on Ethereum still seems to be lagging in comparison to say the other altcoins, I would like to see price kind of trading into say potentially new all-time highs along with Solana and a couple others. We have seen that Solana seems to kind of be leading say the altcoins this sort of bull market run. We haven't really seen the likes of Cardano, you know, our previous all-time high big kind of market cap cryptocurrencies picking up their feet as much as what Solana has done. So if we do kind of trade into new highs, I wouldn't be surprised if we could get through say $5,000. That would be pretty awesome for the pair. We do have this really interesting structure piece that I wanted to kind of go over, and pretty much since we've traded out of this, so if I have to mark out these two internal and external trend lines, I would have something looking like this, which would show price action pretty much having a high of around say $3,600 before we break into say new structure points. But if you also look at this internal trend line that we broke, so if you have a look like that, you can pretty much see that once we broke out of this area, which was around the same time that Trump was getting elected in as president, we've pretty much had quite an aggressive run into say this $3,400 region. I was personally expecting price to kind of trade a little bit higher, say into something like this of this resistance area at around say $4,000. So that's going to be what I'm going to be looking for. And then obviously we have all-time highs and that pocket sitting above. So it might mean that we kind of break and retest this trend line before we sort of move higher. If that is the case, I would actually be quite interested to potentially look for some long positions out of here. I know we did also go over a similar trade idea in the previous week stream, but I just want to reiterate how you can use this Fibonacci tool to your advantage and then look to kind of scale into positions and then go there higher, trade there higher. So that's pretty much what I'm looking at this sort of major altcoins and say Bitcoin at the moment. If we have a look at say the S&P 500 and NASDAQ, this is kind of what I was also showing in the previous tutorials and sort of, you know, weekly updates and live sort of market analysis that I do with you guys. I was quite interested to see how we would react out of this 50% level, and this is what I've been trying to show in our previous streams. It's a really effective tool to use. So you can see how we pretty much made this aggressive new high pretty much post say the Trump election and Trump getting obviously voted in as the next president for the United States. So we pretty much had this aggressive move to the upside. This was pretty much around almost a 10% move, I would say. I think it was even higher than that. Okay, 5.6% or so. So we saw price push for almost 3-4-5 days into say new all-time highs at around $60,000. We got close to rejecting that on the 70% level of the RSI indicator. And then you can see thereafter that we actually just continued to pretty much trade into this rebalanced area of around $5,850, where we then obviously moved higher. So that's been kind of pretty much what I've been looking at over the last sort of week or so. And if we have a look now closely, you can see how prices pretty much moved quite aggressively once we've tapped into that area, and we've already started to see some positive upside momentum thereafter. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start to attack these new all-time highs at around $6,000 on the S&P 500 and pretty much see if we can hold these areas of support. I know we did mention this in some other previous sort of live trading sessions, as well as my market research that I do, that I was quite curious to see how we would react once we broke this ascending trend line over here. However, it's quite common to see price action pretty much fake out, if you want to call it that. So we had this upside trend over here. We then pretty much had this fake out over here, and this is quite a key sort of learning that you can take into, say, your own trading models and your own trading plan. But 9 times out of 10, there is this sort of, I don't want to call it a risk. However, when we do get these major breaks of trend line, sometimes they can just be fake outs and they can be pretty much sweeps of liquidity. You can see how we also banged our head pretty much into this daily 50 EMA, which also aligned with these sort of support areas over here and pretty much our old previous resistance areas, which we broke, and we continue to trade higher. Hence why I was really excited for this sort of rebalancing on the pair and on the asset class. So when we had these 2, 3, 4 days of downward trending trading movement, I wasn't really too nervous or too scared, because I was quite eager to see how we would react out of that 50% level when we actually rebalanced. And you can see how we've already seen quite a nice aggressive move to the upside. So I wouldn't be surprised if we either do one of two things on the S&P 500. We could do pretty much, we could either then run this low down here, which also then marks up with this daily 50 MA, and then we could look for some further confirmation where we continue to see price action trading into new all-time highs. So yes, we might not necessarily just tap into this area, rebalance and move higher. We might just first stall in this area a couple of days before we take out this low, make a new high, and then continue to trade higher. So that's what I'm looking at on the S&P 500. And I think pretty much the Nasdaq looked something similar. So if you have a look here now, you can see something similar, right? So the Nasdaq also finally traded into new all-time highs. This was something that was quite interesting. We were lagging a little bit in terms of, say, the price action with the S&P 500. However, if you have to compare these two price charts next to each other, so I actually might just try and get that up quite quickly for us. But I wouldn't be surprised now if we are pretty much in alignment with the S&P 500 again. And if you have a look here, you can pretty much see, okay, the all-time high back here was for the S&P 500, and that was around $5,600. But you can see we very much do look very similar. Okay, the S&P 500 did crack new all-time highs around about here, and at the same time Nasdaq was trading at around here. So there was this divergence play, pretty much the divergence between these two pairs. If I had to explain divergence to you, it's quite simple. Divergence is pretty much when one pair either makes a new high and the other pair doesn't make a new high, or it forms, say, a lower low, or whatever the case may be. There you have some sort of divergence, which almost kind of dictates that there might be more, say, sort of favoritism or interest in the one pair versus another. So you can use divergence quite clearly and say quite frequently when trading something like the S&P 500 and Nasdaq next to each other. We obviously know that the S&P 500 is a composite made of the top 500 pairs, whereas Nasdaq is obviously trading over 3,000 pairs that are listed on Nasdaq's exchange. So they are similar by nature, but at the same time they are also a little bit different. And if you have a look here now, I would almost want to say that we look very much in terms of in alignment again. We look to be moving in sync with Nasdaq, which also makes sense because most of the sort of higher caps are also listed in both composites, right? So if you have a look at Nasdaq now, something very similar to how I was just kind of showcasing this on the S&P 500, and that pretty much is you have this move, so it's quite aggressive. So if you have a look here, and what you can do is you can pretty much mark out the high and mark out the low. So it's this technique or this trading strategy works really well when you're kind of pro trend trading and when you're trying to, say, capture moves to the upside, and all you're really looking for is, say, a high and a low, a pullback of some sort, rebalance, and then push into the new highs. So if you had to look at this, this is quite nice. We pretty much had price showing us that we Okay, we weren't really overextended on the RSI indicator, but we were very close to trading around that 70% level. So in those instances, you don't necessarily need to actually start entering positions like this, and then you open yourself up to a bit more risk, obviously, and there's a little bit more downside to this. However, you can just mark out the high. So in this scenario here, this would be your low. I use my fractal indicator to tell me, say, the lows and the highs. If you guys have not already done that, it's really easy. You can just type in William Fractal on your indicator list and it should come up. So it'll look something like that. You click on that and it'll pretty much bring up the option to give you the highs and lows. And if you have a look here now, you can pretty much see that that was our low, which we traded perfectly into that 50 daily EMA. That was our high. I mark out my Fibonacci tool from the low to the high. This is my move that I'm interested in, because why? Well, that broke structure in a couple of places. So one, if I had to just maybe zoom in here and put in some actual typing and writing, it would look something like this. So we broke all-time high over here. So have a look at this now. Okay, so why is this move important here? Well, this was my all-time high over here at around $20,684. So this candle over here was quite important. We had three bullish engulfing candles to the upside, and if you have a look here, this was my previous high over here. So you can see that this structure point over here was broken by this candle here, and then we had pretty much three continuous bullish engulfing candles to the upside. There was no real rejection or sort of price sort of candles inside here that maybe suggest the price was slowing down, besides this inside bar candle over here. Then you saw this daily bullish candle engulf pretty much this previous day candle as well as this previous day candle to the left of that, and then we saw price action aggressively move to the upside. So that's something you always want to try and keep in the back of your arsenal and use to your actual advantage. So if you have a look, then this is your low, that is your high. You mark out with the Fibonacci tool and you're pretty much working out two things. So one is discount and another is premium, right? So yeah, you are trying to pretty much buy something in a lower area, so something under let's say under 50% of the Fibonacci tool, which would look something like this. Okay, you can also use, say, your Fibonacci tool to mark out the actual fib extensions, so that could look something like this. So 61.8, and if you have a look here, that actually worked out spot on. So if I go over here and I draw out my 0 and my 1, so maybe this doesn't look something, maybe this will look a little bit more familiar to you, right? So if you have a look here now, I'm marking out my low with this Fibonacci tool. You can pretty much see how we came into both the discounted area on the 50% level, and we also mitigated the 61 or 62 level of the Fibonacci tool. So if you were looking for entries, you could have had something like this, right? And then you would have your stop loss below this low over here, and you could pretty much then try trade something into new all-time highs. So for example, if you wanted to use some extension levels such as -1 and -2, those are simple standard deviation levels that you can use when targeting new all-time highs. So you could see there we could potentially extend our targets to, say, levels of around 22,484 or higher, right? So this is quite a nice sort of reaction. I actually want to show you guys how you can trade this now on the Prime XBT portal using something very similar. So there's two ways in which you can do this, right? One is you could wait for a potential shift in momentum. So what do I mean by that? Well, you can see we have this daily 50 EMA trading pretty much just below this low over here. So it could do something like this over the next few weeks. And price action could quite easily just run into this low, okay, which would mean we would have ourselves a high at, let's say we left a high at over here, okay, and then pretty much we could manipulate and move higher thereafter, okay. So if you have a look at that, it's quite a simple trading model. Pretty much all you're looking for, if you have a look here on the left hand side, you can pretty much see what I'm trying to show you. So you can see how price action took out this low. So this was my low over here. You can see how price action took this low, okay, so it moved like that and then moved higher, rebalance, and then continued to push higher. That's pretty much what I'm looking for here. So you can do one of two things. You can either wait for, say, this setup to go like that, or if you foresee price continuing to move into, say, higher regions without you, you could, say, look for potential long something like this, targeting a 2-to-1, and you could split up your entries. So you could, say, risk a 0.5% on this entry, and then you could risk another 0.5% on the next entry, right? So I'm actually going to show you now how you can do this on the Prime XBT platform. It's really simple. So if you have not already signed up an account, it's super simple to do so. You can pretty much go onto your our main trading and main landing page. That will pretty much show you all of, say, our options that we have. So this is an account that I've got already loaded up with some funding, but if you have not already done so, you need to obviously get yourself verified. You will then make your transfer into the account. That can be either done via fiat currency, it can be done through cryptocurrency, whatever it may be. So here it will look like this when the funding lands into your account. So you'll have USD sitting there, and you can pretty much then choose which account you want to do. So for example, Nasdaq is obviously a indice, and that is going to be done on your CFD trading platform. You're not going to be able to trade Nasdaq on the crypto futures platform. So if you guys have not already watched my previous how-to tutorial, which was on Nasdaq, you can actually see in detail a little bit more about how you can go and navigate it, and how you can find it, and how you can actually trade it on the platform. But I'll show you for today's tutorial purposes exactly the same sort of thing. So if you have a look over here, I've got some USD Tether. If I want to transfer this funding out of my wallet and into my CFDs account, I simply just go and choose transfer. I choose my destination account, which I want the funding to sit into or go into. In this case, it would be my CFD trading account. I then go confirm. It will then say transfer is complete. Once the transfer is done, you can then go to your CFD trading platform, and you'll be able to view pretty much all of your funding that is being transferred into this account and that is sitting there, right? So if you have a look here now, this is pretty much my account. You can see I've actually still got that Ethereum buy that is running. I don't think you'll be able to see that, but I'll just move up my platform a little bit. And this is pretty much the terminal, okay? When you come in here, you'll be able to see your balance over here. You'll be able to see the amount of equity you have to trade in the account. If you are running any current positions, you'll be able to see both your realized as well as your unrealized P&L. So that looks like this pretty much over here. And then obviously you'll be able to see the margin available to you as well as how much margin you can trade. So if you have a look over here on the left hand side, you've got a couple of options. So this will be the account in which your funding will sit. You've then got trade, charts, trading history, activity log, workspace, workspace 2. The workspaces are pretty much a function where if you click on this plus sign, you can choose and create your own workplace. So for example, if you don't want your widgets to look something like this on the default action, you can go and tailor it however you want. So in order to find Nasdaq in this example, you would need to go change the drop down function from all markets, CFD, crypto or Forex to CFD. And if you go on CFD, you'll be able to see then the list of tickers we have available to offer. So if you have a look over here, you can see Nasdaq. So I'll go click on the actual tick here, and it will bring up this chart function. Once it brings up the chart function, it'll look something like this. And then you have the option to make and execute any buy or sell positions. Okay. So for today's example, I'd like to buy Nasdaq. So what I would go do is I'll click on the buy button over here. Right. I click on buy. It says create new order. It says, do you want to do a market order, limit order, or stop order. You can change that by clicking on the actual order type section. You've then got market, limit, and stop functions. I'll choose market. Let's say, for example, I would like to do 0.3 contracts. I'll place a stop loss. So my stop loss in this case would be around the low of around $19,900. So I would need to go and change that myself manually. Okay. And then you'll be able to see that, okay, cool. If price action trades against me, I'll lose $250. So in this instance, quite high. I have $7,000 in my account. I normally trade between 0.5% and 1% risk. So I like to bring that down to say around $70. So I can just manually change that until I found the sweet spot in which my risk is correct. So let's say, for example, I want to do 0.09 contracts. You will then be able to see now that my projected loss, if price trades against me, will be $76. And then obviously you would do the same for your take profit. So I like to trade a 2-to-1. What is 2-to-1 risk reward? Pretty much if I'm risking one R, it's going to be the equivalent of $76 in this case. I would then like to make 2 times what I'm risking. So if I'm risking $76, I would like to then make $150. So how do I do that? I then just go and choose. In this example, I would need to just manually change the numbers a bit. So 22500 is going to give me a projected profit of $157. I then go send order. I go confirm. And now if you have a look at the chart, you can click on the button here where it says pretty much your order. You'll be able to see your stop loss now. So if I want to maybe drag it up a bit, or maybe I want to drag it down a bit, I can change that. So you just simply drag and drop the function, and then you would need to go confirm the modification of your position once you've done that. And then again, if I want to actually go now and see my take profit level, I just click on it again and you'll see it'll sit at the top hand side, TP as well as my stop loss, right? And then obviously depending on how price action trades over the next few days or whatever it may be, that is what you'll be able to see going into the actual trading session. So that's pretty much how you can enter into positions on, say, NASDAQ on our Prime XBT platform. I'm also quite curious to see, we are actually about to go into New York Open, and I think we've already started trading already. So I'm expecting a bit of volatility to pick up. I can already see BTC is moving to the upside during New York Open session. We've got pretty much price action now sitting at around $94,500. That is awesome to see. That is pretty much roughly around $5,000 off our target of say $100,000. I'm quite curious to see how price action is going to actually react when we get into $95,000. So that is pretty much it for today's trading session. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot. I'm really excited to be here with you guys, providing value week on week. I'm excited that everyone is joining the journey with me. I can see that there's a lot of questions coming through, so make sure you get your questions in before the stream ends. And to all new joiners that are obviously with us today, welcome. And to the previous people that have been supporting, thank you for joining again, and enjoy the rest of your week. Cheers, guys.